was holding the sigil, because what I was trying to do was kind of sort of think about Astaroth before I went to sleep, so I could maybe like communicate with her in my dreams, but I was not ready for a full-on like fucking manifestation of a demon. And then suddenly I just felt this energy fill the room. I was like, what the fuck? Like, it felt like coming up on a fucking E. Hello everyone, my name is BlackWitchDirah. I'm a Luciferian witch of the left-hand path and an occult educator. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to those new here. It is wonderful to have you here. So today I thought I would cover something that I'm asked a lot but never seem to give an answer to, and I think I don't bother to give the answer to this question because it requires quite a long-winded response, which is, how did you get into this? And I'm asked this by people that follow me online and know me as Dirah, and I'm asked this by people in my everyday life when I tell them, you know, what I do essentially for a living and as a lifestyle. So the first question that I'm met with when I tell them that I'm an occultist and what my practice is based on, everyone's like, how the fuck did you get into that? So that's what I'm going to be going into today. But before we get started, I don't have a whole lot of announcements for today, just a reminder of the Witch Skills soft launch, which is coming up very soon. So you can get involved in that. It involves you getting access to 2 weeks of free content for you to try out and play around with, and give us some feedback. So the instructions of how to sign up for that are in the description box below, along with everything else that I have created in terms of occult education, so my courses, my classes, my learning programs for you to browse through at your leisure. Also, I almost forgot to mention this, so I've decided to launch a workshop program now that my YouTube channel is monetized. Yay! Thank you so much for helping me reach that milestone. By the way, I could not have done it without every single one of you, so thank you ever so much for your support for my channel. So yeah, I'm launching a membership thing, which is going to be like a workshop program. So I'll be doing a monthly workshop. There's 3 tiers to the membership. I will be posting more details later on, but essentially you get access to a monthly workshop, a monthly Q&A, and I'm going to have like a community chat on Discord. And for the higher tiers, there's going to be discounts off of my all of my educational content, and in the highest tier you also get a free one-on-one with me every month. So that is super exciting. So if that sounds good to you, please look out for further info. I just have a few I's to dot and T's to cross, and that will be all very official. So into today's video. So how did I get into this? So I don't really have a profound story of me, you know, kind of getting into witchcraft, the occult. I didn't go through any kind of crazy initiation to get here. I've been through several kind of initiations, but, you know, not like one big event in which I just became who I am today. I also don't have anything to tell you that makes me special or stand out from anyone else. I didn't have my first interaction with Lucifer when I was a child. I didn't see ghosts as soon as I came out of the womb. You know, I didn't have a witchy grandma to teach me lots of stuff. I didn't get into this like crazy young either. I was 20 when I started taking this seriously. I was 19 when I started to kind of, you know, identify as a witch and you know, practice witchcraft and actually like develop it as a practice. So, yeah, you know, I didn't get into this crazy young, and I think I got into it at a good age to be getting into this kind of thing. It's not something you want to get into when you're super, super young. So my upbringing wasn't super religious. I didn't grow up in the church. I lived with my mother for the most part. My mother kind of had her stuff with Christianity, in the sense that, like, she would consider herself a Christian, then she wouldn't. We would have these kind of like periods of time in which we attended church, and periods of time where, you know, we fucking didn't for months and months on end. Like, Christianity was never something that was taken seriously. And I don't have religious trauma. I don't. And to be honest, I don't think a lot of people that say they do. I don't think that if you went to church as a kid that you have religious trauma. And I think that takes a big shit on people that do have genuine religious trauma. So, yeah, sorry about that. I mean, you might be sitting there thinking, how are you to say who has religious trauma and who doesn't? I just think it's fucking thrown around so much that anyone that's been slightly exposed to Christianity has religious trauma now. I just think, like, there are people that are, like, genuinely abused and stuff, so just, like, you know, stop. Just because, like, you went to church and didn't like it does not mean you have religious trauma. So yeah, I wasn't crazily influenced by Christianity. There were times where, as a kid, I thought I was Christian because I thought that was just, like, the right thing to be, and I didn't really... I'd never, like, read the Bible as a kid or anything. I remember my mum was like, oh, do you want to go to Sunday school? I'd be like, no, just because I was just neurodivergent and just did not want to. Still am neurodivergent, that hasn't gone anywhere. But I just fucking hated the idea of leaving my mother's side and going up to Sunday school. I was like, nope, I'll stay down here for the painfully boring sermon and just, yeah, ride it out. So yeah, my upbringing consisted of bits and pieces of Christianity up until the age of about 10 or 11 years old, and then it was just very kind of like non-religious after that. I didn't really have any other religious exposure. My father wasn't religious. My father is a Freemason. So there was this real, like, mystery about him being a Freemason, because I never understood what it meant until I was an adult. And my mum kind of would make this, like, half-hearted joke that, like, my dad was a devil worshipper because he was a Freemason. So yeah, that was a thing as well. I never really, like, understood what my dad was kind of, you know, what that stuff was about. My dad has actually converted to Islam now, which is an interesting progression in the story. So yeah, anyway, going off on a bit of a tangent now and things that aren't entirely relevant, but I was always really, like, I loved Halloween, right? My birthday's in October, and I just loved that whole spooky season shit. And I also always loved the idea of tarot. Like, I was just like, that just seems like the coolest fucking shit ever. And my mum was kind of like, no, that invites evil in, like, you know, you don't want to celebrate Halloween, and, you know, you don't want to, like, mess with tarot or anything, so it's going to invite evil into your life and things like that. She doesn't believe that bullshit now, but at the time, I think, where she was attending church, she was fed certain ideas which, you know, were just bullshit. And then when I was 15, I bought my first tarot deck. Didn't, like, take it really, like, that seriously. I didn't really know what the fuck I was doing with it. I would literally, like, pull cards and then read the little, like, book that came with it. But what was interesting was things that started to happen from, like, the age of kind of, like, 12, where I would start feeling like things were going to happen, and then they would. Like, these kind of, this sort of, like, psychic ability started to kind of come in. And I didn't see it as, like, psychic ability at the time. I didn't think it was a thing of, like, oh, I can see the future. And I feel things and I sense things. I just thought I was really weird. Like, I just thought this isn't right. Like, there's something like wrong with me, and I would try my best to kind of just like ignore it, because I was just like, I just don't understand what this is. And I remember, like, I vividly remember being like 15 years old, right, and having to make a decision about something and just not knowing what to do. And so I took this just like random handful of beads and just threw them on the floor. And I read the beads and I was like, okay, that's what I need to do. So kind of like bone throwing, but I didn't even realise that what I was doing at the time was divination. I was just like, wow, this is what I'm gonna do, kind of thing. And I didn't even like look back on that until like years and years later, and I was like, oh shit, like I was actually like intuitively doing this stuff before I even knew what it was. So it kind of poses this thing here where, you know, are people born witches or do they become witches? And I think that it's a case of like, some people are born with natural gifts. Some people have things develop as a result of events that have occurred in their life. For example, people that have had near-death experiences, especially at a young age, tend to be really great when it comes to like their mediumship abilities and their abilities, their necromancy abilities, right? Because they have experienced that energy firsthand and kind of crossed over into that realm. Or people that grew up in certain traditions and, you know, maybe had an older relative like teaching them like little bits and pieces of witchcraft from a young age, like they kind of got a head start into this stuff. So I think that, you know, we have a natural kind of, we're born with natural abilities and talents, perhaps, but regardless of that, like becoming a witch, becoming an occultist requires you to train yourself a hell of a lot, and, you know, new abilities emerge. So I think it's kind of like a bit of both, really. Like, there are people that are just more naturally in alignment with this path, and people who just pick up things faster, and then there are people that just, you know, need to work on things a little bit more. So I think it's like a mixture of the two, really. Like, we can be naturally talented at things just as like we can be naturally talented at like mundane things. But I don't think that's to say that someone that's born with gifts is more gifted than someone that's trained themselves. Like, you could be someone that was born with, well, not necessarily born with, but perhaps developed from an early age some degree of like psychic ability, but if you haven't trained it and you haven't mastered it, but someone else has and they've kind of unlocked that themselves through like hard work, that person could easily be better at reading situations than you are. So yeah, I never had any kind of exposure to witchcraft or anything like that when I was younger, but I did start naturally doing weird things. Well, you know, weird things in mundane terms, in my sort of early to mid teenage years, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna tell anyone about this. And I've always also had this natural like affinity with nature, and, you know, my favourite place to be has always been in the woods, in the forest. And a bit later on into my teens, I started to have some very disturbing experiences in terms of like being very astrally open, not knowing how to protect myself astrally, and having just all this shit come through in terms of like dreams and astral travel and things like that. And I didn't even know that I had these like astral abilities, but I basically just kept getting fucking attacked all the time, and it was really, really disturbing. Like, it really kind of fucked me up in terms of like my mental health as well. Like, I had a really bad period, and I genuinely believe that it was partially down to being so like spiritually exposed to things. And I remember the house that I lived in at the time had some really gnarly energy in it, and I was basically just like a fucking feed for all of the shit that resided there. And it was kind of coming out of that mental health episode, like I'd moved house by this point, and I felt like I really needed to find some kind of like purpose. And I think I'd had such like, I felt like my life had been stripped away from me so much because I'd been so isolated in this period of my life, and I'd lost a lot. I'd lost friends, I'd lost a relationship, I'd lost myself. I was on a medication at the time that made me put on quite a lot of weight. I never left the house. It was just a really miserable existence, and I just completely lost myself in this, and I wanted to find some kind of purpose and meaning to life again. And that started out with, okay, like, what am I like interested in? Like, I wanted to learn something new, just like literally just as a distraction to what was going on in my fucking head. Like, I was just like, I just need a distraction. I just need to find something I can invest in and for my brain to chew on. And I started reading about Wicca, and I started making a book of shadows. I started learning about elements and herbs and crystals and, you know, all that kind of like baby witch stuff, and it was really fun, and it was really like comforting as well. And the mental health episode I had, it was basically a really severe trauma response to something that happened, and I became agoraphobic. I was having panic attacks on a daily basis, up to about 5 panic attacks a day. I had to be sedated sometimes because they got so bad. And, you know, finding out about crystals and stuff, and even if it was just like a placebo thing, like this crystal helps with anxiety, I was just like, wow, like, you know, it was really comforting. And then I decided to make like an Instagram like witchy account so that I could just kind of shit post on there about things like, oh, look at the herbs I'm growing, and oh, I'm learning to read tarot and things like that. And I thought, oh, I've got an idea, let me read other people, that will be fun. So I started giving out like free readings. I was just like, yeah, like, let me read you, just because I wanted to practice and I wanted to, you know, see if this was something I was good at. And I got really good feedback from it. And I was like, okay. So after I sort of like built up a kind of feedback over like a month or so, I was like, okay, I'm gonna charge like £3 for a reading. And then, you know, I was still getting people like coming to me for readings and stuff, and I was like, okay, cool, I've got a, you know, tiny little income coming from this now. And it was a lot of fun, and I loved doing it. But what I found was like, I was really exhausting myself, because when you're opening yourself up to that stuff, you know, and you're taking on like everyone else's energy and stuff, I was just like, oh my god, I feel like I've been hit by a fucking train or something. So it took a while to sort of establish some like energetic boundaries around things like that, and then I soon started offering spellwork services after that, and it was like, you know, super cheap, because I wasn't even sure if like it would work. And then they did work, and I was like, okay, shit, so I guess that like I'm a witch now. And it was like really kind of like basic stuff, just like little attraction spells and abundance and protection and things like that. And I got humbled pretty quick though, because there were definitely times I got a bit too big for my boots, and yeah, things things happened. I was like, oh, okay. And it was, you know, just very like basic kind of like traditional witchcraft. I wasn't really working with like any spirits or anything like that, until about 6 months later I started to work with Santa Maite. And I've said it before that, you know, I've worked with Santa Maite longer than I've worked with demons. She was very much my first, and it's obviously going to be my last as well, seeing as she is death, which is, you know, incredibly fitting that my journey essentially starts and ends with her. So that was the first sort of like real connection that I got there. And then I had this crazy tower moment where like a relationship ended, and it was a very unpleasant relationship to be in. It was abusive, and yeah, it was just a really horrible experience. And how it ended was not not amicably, to say the least. And where I was so hurt and I was so angry, and I desperately wanted, you know, my power back after being violated, I think that's when I started looking into like left-hand path stuff, and I started looking at demonolatry, and of course I was skeptical, and I was sort of like, I feel like this could be a mistake, and that, you know, this might not be the best idea, because I still had all that like conditioning. But I just spent a lot of time studying it, and, you know, eventually that conditioning kind of broke down, and I started working with demons, and the first demon that I worked with was Astaroth, and I evoked her accidentally. What people don't understand about demonic sigils is how powerful they truly are. Demons are formless, hence why they have sigils. So if you sit there and meditate with a sigil, something's going to happen. And I didn't realise that at the time. I was laying in bed and I was holding the sigil, because what I was trying to do was kind of sort of think about Astaroth before I went to sleep, so I could maybe like communicate with her in my dreams. But I was not ready for a full-on like fucking manifestation of a demon. And then suddenly I just felt this energy fill the room. I was like, what the fuck? Like, it felt like coming up on a fucking E. Like, it felt like that, like, you know, that rush where like your stomach kind of goes over and you go like, so. And I kind of got a little bit addicted to that, actually, because after it happened once, I wanted it again and again. I was trying to do it every night, because I was like, that would just felt so fucking cool. So yeah, I guess by that point I was, you know, eager to find out more, and I felt quite safe with Astaroth. Like, I wasn't intimidated by her energy, and I, you know, continued to pursue a working relationship with her. I learned more about demonolatry, I learned how to do rituals, and then I kind of branched out into working with other demons, and then it kind of just expanded from there really into what it is now. And, you know, now consider myself, you know, obviously a Luciferian witch, but I also consider myself a goetic magician, seeing as that most of the magic that I practice is goetic magic. It's not all that I do, but it's most of what I do. I just think that the Goetia is a really cool system to work with, and that there's just so much to it. I don't want to be a goetic magician for the rest of my life. Not that I'll just completely just give up goetic magic one day, but I don't want that to be the focus of my practice for the rest of my life, because I just think that's really limiting. But I think, you know, a good kind of like 5 to 10 years of really dedicating myself to goetic magic and just, you know, kind of consuming all of the gnosis possible that I can get from it, that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I also started on my clipothic stuff as well. Probably, I mean, the thing is like, you start on your clipothic stuff like before you even intend to start on your clipothic stuff. So by the time I'd reached the point where I was looking into the clipoth, I've managed to realise that I'd already done a certain kind of like amount of it. I don't like to kind of talk about the clipoth in linear terms, in the sense that like, oh, you're finished kind of thing, like this is the start, this is the end, because that in itself is illusionary. But if we're just referring to the structure of the tree, then you know, I was essentially in Samael by this point, by the time that I had you know, started to look at the clipoth. And I feel like the clipothic stuff is what kind of marked, you know, really kind of intense changes in my life, and helped me to really understand what was going on and why, and helped me a lot in terms of alchemy as well. So we're talking almost 7 years into this now, and in the grand scheme of things, that is not a crazy long time. I still feel like a newbie a lot of the time. I still feel like the more stuff I find out, the more I realise that I just don't know anything. And I feel like the amount of time that you've been practicing, when it comes to people in the occult, it becomes like this like bragging right, where it's like, yeah, I've been practicing for 20, 30 years, I'm a lifelong this and that, and it's just like, oh, just fucking do one. Because it's a bragging right, it's fluffing yourself up, it's all ego, and it doesn't fucking matter, because someone that's been practicing 2 years can have dedicated more to their path than you have in 20 fucking years. So in terms of like linear time, it has some value, but not as much value as people assume it does. But yeah, basically, in a nutshell, getting into occultism and the left-hand path was the best thing I ever did, and I don't know what my life would be without it. I'm very, very attached to it. It you know, makes... I'm careful to not attach my identity to things, because that tends to lead me into a lot of pain, but can't really help it when it comes to the occult. It's very much ingrained in me. It's very much my kind of life force a lot of the time, and you know, it's what motivates me, it's what drives me, and it gives me a lot of meaning, and it gives me a lot of purpose, and it helps me to understand myself, it helps me to understand other people, it helps me to understand life. And I think the best thing about it is that I'm never ever gonna stop learning, and that is so exciting. So yeah, nothing profound in that story, really. I think it's quite a kind of simple, straightforward thing of just like, yeah, you know, I got into kind of like paganism, and then I found this, and I didn't have any kind of special anything special happened to me as a kid, where, you know, I was like, I knew that I was meant for the dark path. Like, no. I just found it, or it found me one day when I needed it. Yeah, it's really just shaped my life into what I feel like it's meant to be. So I'm gonna leave this video there today, guys. I hope that this was a good watch, me telling you about how I got here. I personally don't think it's the most exciting story in the world, but a lot of people seem to want to know about it, so I thought I'd cover it. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe to my channel. I upload every Saturday at 8 PM UK time, so I will see you next week. Goodbye for now.